Welcome back from coffee. And this is the last session in what is a very, very full morning. And this one may feel very close to the heart of many of you because this is the one about how you identify priorities and allocate funding. And actually the last session finished up with almost a discussion of that very point, which we will obviously continue and deepen. So our speakers today on my far right is Dr. Emel Kabul, who's the CEO of the Education Outcomes Fund. Replacing the Minister for Rwanda, we're very grateful for the Minister for Technical, Vocational and Employment of the Republic of Guinea, Aminata Kaba, for coming. Thank you so much for being here. We also have joining us the Minister for Higher Education for Malaysia, Dr. Zambri Abd Qadir. Thank you very much for being here. And His Excellency Monsef Bouktia, who's the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research for Tunisia. I should just tell you that our colleague from Guinea will be speaking in French, but will answer questions in English. But our Minister from Tunisia will be speaking in English, but answering questions in French. So that's just to kind of give you, I thought that was a lovely symmetry there. So that will just give you some kind of warning of those who don't speak French, of when to put on your translation headphones. And since I'm mentioning that, this is a good moment for me to thank the interpreters for the work they do at events like this. It is quite remarkable, actually, what people manage to do. So many thanks to them. And with that, Dr. Kabul, if I could invite you not to take the podium, but to take the whole stage.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. So I'm really happy to be here and to share some of my lessons learned about funding and priorities and planning, both from my time as cabinet minister in Tunisia, so you have to be pleased with two Tunisians on the podium today, this morning. Very honored to have my colleague here with me. But also from my time as education commissioner, and for the last 6.5 years as CEO of the Education Outcomes Fund. The Education Outcomes Fund is the UN-hosted trust fund that helps governments achieve better learning outcomes and employment outcomes for the most marginalized children and youth. And we use an innovative finance model where we tie funding to verified results. And maybe to that a bit later more. So we've talked about the learning crisis enough. We know that over 70% of children in low and middle income countries cannot read and write for meaning by the age 10. Last World Bank report actually says 68% of youth globally, including high-income countries, don't have the basic skills to be productive, active in a modern economy. And so while we need more funding, we need also better funding, more effectiveness. And I'm sure many of you have seen as much waste as I've seen. So as education commissioner, I had the honor, the chance to travel the world for 2 years. I'm not going to name countries because it's not about shaming, it's about learning. You have a $70 million textbook project that was deemed as having achieved the results. In a way, the textbooks have been distributed all over the country. But when I traveled, I found these textbooks in the cupboard of head teachers have never been used. Or another country, in a farming village, I go visit a school. They have 3 massive toilet blocks. But they don't have doors and furniture in the classroom, and animals come in the night into the classroom. And I talked with the head teacher, and I was like, why the hell do you have these 3 massive toilet blocks and you don't have a door and furniture? And she's like, yeah, I had 2 toilet blocks, and there was an NGO that came to visit. And because someone in Washington or in London or elsewhere read this amazing research that toilets help girls to stay in school, which is true, by the way, and they had funding for that. And they came, and she said, I need a door and furniture. And they're like, no, we can only do toilet blocks. No, she has 3 toilet blocks, and she still doesn't have door and furniture. Or the last one is skill training for young youth in the Middle East who live in Islam, which lasts a whole year. At the end of the year, only 10% of them are employed. This is actually funding that undermines the impact because these youth have had informal jobs, day jobs that they've been supporting their family with. So at the end of this skill training, their families were poorer and they were worse off. And this list can go on and go on and go on. In the World Development Report, the World Bank says 2/3 of all employment and skills programs have absolutely no impact on earning or employment. Over 50% of education interventions and programs that we do worldwide that have been evaluated, because many are not, have absolutely no impact on learning. So funding is not equal learning totally. And so why? I don't think that any one of us, any minister in the world or any funders wake up Monday morning and they're like, my gosh, I'm going to put all my passion, all my work, all my team resources to waste $100 million this week. I'm 99.99% sure that's not the case. Yeah? And so why is this happening? And I'm going to share some hypotheses I have from the work I've been doing. One is how we develop strategies and how we set priorities. When I became cabinet minister, I sat with my family and I asked them, how do you want me to serve this country that you would be proud? And my mother, who's been a public servant all her life in a ministry, she's like, please, 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 Amel, don't become the new Messiah. She's like, every new minister that comes, they think they're going to reinvent the world. They're going to start with a new strategy. They're going to throw away everything which everyone did before them and then start anew. And knowing worldwide, including in this country, funny enough, our tenure as cabinet minister has been shorter and shorter, which means basically you spend all your time trying to figure out what you're going to do, and by the time you start implementing, you're already gone. And so what I did, actually, I invited, and she said, I'm going to hold you accountable for that, so when your mother tells you something, even if I'm 51 now, she still scares me. So I invited all previous living ministers that led my department into the ministry and talked with every one of them about what they've learned, projects they've started that they wish would continue, mistakes they've made that I shouldn't, amazing people in the ministry that I should be aware of. And then had a workshop with all of them, and independently of their political affiliations. And one of them, I remember, came into the ministry and he had tears in his eyes and he's like, this is the first time I entered the department since I've left. And they helped me immensely. One of them gave me a massive World Bank study that they've done. Another one had one of the big 3 consulting firms that develop a strategy. I'm very skeptical, and I was like, that's perfect, tell me why. Tell me you're skeptical, because probably someone did another program there, maybe it wasn't sustainable, maybe when the funding ended, things happened. I want to know this now, not later. And I know when we are top leaders and do presentation and ask people for feedback, you have the usual same suspect that ask questions, no one says anything, but once they enter the elevator, they talk among each other and it's like, David, that was really a stupid idea, it's never going to succeed. But you don't hear that. And so the question is, how can you create spaces like give people, for example, a workshop to say, you're going to spend half a day looking at this strategy and tell me why it's the most stupid idea in the world and why it's going to fail. And so that's how you can take risk, by giving people permission to criticize you. I see time is up, so I'm going to go through quickly. Another lessons learned for me is strategy as much as about saying no, much more about saying no than about saying yes to things. When you're a minister, when you're in government, you have a million problems, and you would need 1,000,000 years to solve all of those. And a lot of people have different priorities that they come to you with. Even donors have sometimes different priorities. A recent Center for Global Development study, they looked at 35 countries, and they found actually what policymakers want to achieve in their country is often different from what donor priorities is. I had a donor come into my office and saying, we have this big strategy, we can support you with $10 million. And I was like, okay, this is my strategy. Can you help me with $10 million do my strategy? And the ambassador was like, no, because it's linked to these priorities. And I was like, very tempting, but I can't take it. I have such limited resources. If I take that money and do that program, then actually I will have less resources to deliver on my strategy. It's going to distract me. And so, by the way, like often we undermine what we want to achieve, and that's why the Education Outcomes Fund, another champion countries here, probably Ghana, when we met with the government of Ghana and the ministry, we said, what do you want to work on? And their priorities was out-of-school children. Get out-of-school children into remedial learning programs, integrate them into school, and make sure they stay in school. And so our fund works with Ghana on out-of-school children with the aim to reach 80,000, and congratulations to the Ghana team. Actually, we've worked kind of few months, a year now, and we have already 20,000 children who joined remedial learning and who have reintegrated school from the north of Ghana, some of the poorest communities there. Thank you. So maybe another, and I can tell you another thing which I made a mistake is sometimes political forces kind of hinder you from bold decisions. We had a big mise à niveau, in French, I guess in English is upgrading program for SMEs and institutions. And when I asked for an evaluation to be done, it was running for 15 years. We found out actually that the best institutions are the ones who used the program, not the one that needed it the most. Because they were the one able to do the application, they were the one motivated to do so. So basically it was a waste because I knew these best institutions could access help elsewhere. But since it was free from government as a subsidy program, they took it. And I was like, let's kill this, let's cancel this program. But then my team convinced me and my cabinet convinced me that, oh my God, the media headlines are going to be massive, 15 years supporting SME, now you're killing this program, It's going to distract from your priorities, you're going to be grilled in the press like ever, and it's, the political price you're going to pay is much higher than what you do. And they convinced me, but today I think back, I think I should have been bolder. I should have killed that program. Because the number of my team who were working on that program was some of the best, and they weren't available for me to do something else. So maybe to finish, to say at EWF, we're trying to learn some of those lessons. We work today with 6 countries, among them South Africa, Rwanda, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Tunisia. We're launching a skill program. We hold people, our model is we pay for results. We don't pay for activities. We don't pay for outputs, not 100,000 teachers trained. We pay for outcomes. We pay for children who move from primary to secondary and stay there. We pay for young people who are placed in a job and have a retention in a job. We pay for out-of-school children who are not in the street anymore, but stay in school for 2 years once they integrated. And by that, we incentivize everyone to basically in the same direction, to be accountable. We create evidence for what works at what price. We work with the last mile children. I'm deeply convinced that an education system that works for the most marginalized works for everyone else. So if you focus on those, everyone else can be solved. And we create partnerships also with private sector, with social investors, with civil society on the ground to achieve this. And thankfully, we launched the 2 biggest outcomes funds again last year in education. And on the investor side, we were 3 times oversubscribed. So when you build it right, people will come. So I hope we have 29 partners. I hope I can encourage you to join this journey of delivering for children on outcomes, on learning, rather than having bodies in classroom, having educated minds. Thank you.
If I could invite the Minister for Guinea to take the podium now, and just remind non-Francophones that you will need your headsets.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, et merci beaucoup de m'accueillir sur ce podium. Je vais essayer de parler lentement pour que les gens puissent comprendre avec les interprètes. Tout d'abord, je vais essayer de vous expliquer le paysage éducatif en République de Guinée. Au niveau du secteur de l'enseignement en Guinée, nous avons 3 secteurs de l'éducation. L'enseignement préuniversitaire et l'alphabétisation, l'enseignement technique et professionnel et l'emploi, dont je suis la ministre. Et enfin, nous avons l'enseignement supérieur, la recherche scientifique et l'innovation. À ce niveau, nous sommes en ce moment en processus de réforme substantielle, déjà sur le passé, mais qui sont également en cours et aussi qui sont en voie d'élaboration. Néanmoins, plusieurs défis sont réellement nos problématiques, notamment en termes d'accessibilité et de financement du système éducatif. Au niveau préuniversitaire, juste pour vous donner des chiffres et des statistiques au niveau de la Guinée, on a un taux d'achèvement qui a chuté de 68,2% en 2016 à 54,4% en 2019, avec un écart du genre très important. On a 62,8% de garçons scolarisés, comparativement à 46,6% pour les filles. Aussi, nous avons un rapport qui s'appelle le programme PASEC, qui est basé sur les acquis d'apprentissage et des compétences des élèves au niveau primaire, avec un pourcentage d'élèves qui, aujourd'hui, ont un seul minimum de compétences en langue de 45%, notamment la langue française. Au niveau de l'enseignement technique, nous avons moins de 1% de jeunes de 15 à 24 ans sont inscrits au niveau de sous-secteur. Et il y a également la grosse problématique de l'adéquation entre la formation et le besoin du marché. Concernant l'enseignement supérieur et la recherche scientifique, l'accès à l'enseignement supérieur ainsi qu'aux bourses reste réservé à une minorité de jeunes, avec un taux variant entre 10 et 15%, si on considère la période de 2010 à 2019. En termes de planification, la Guinée aujourd'hui dispose d'un plan décennal de l'éducation qui s'appelle PRODEG, qui couvre en fait la période de 2020 à 2029. Et ça concerne les différents secteurs de l'éducation, notamment l'enseignement préuniversitaire, l'enseignement technique et l'enseignement supérieur. Ce programme a été organisé avec l'aide des partenaires techniques et financiers, notamment l'UNESCO, pour décrire les différentes priorités, les 10 prochaines priorités pour la République de Guinée. La mise en œuvre de ce programme est faite en plusieurs étapes. La première phase s'étend de 2020 à 2024 et nous allons procéder à une évaluation à la fin de cette année afin que la deuxième phase débute en 2025. Comme dans de nombreux pays, en Guinée, le financement de l'éducation est une problématique majeure. Les fonds alloués par le gouvernement ne suffisent pas souvent pour répondre aux besoins du secteur de l'éducation. Donc, ainsi, l'aide des bailleurs de fonds devient une aide vraiment nécessaire et cruciale. Néanmoins, plusieurs défis persistent dans l'exécution en fait, et l'allocation de ces fonds. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons une certaine coordination entre les acteurs, les projets financés et l'alignement sur les priorités nationales. En termes d'allocation budgétaire, les différents sous-secteurs ne s'appuient pas forcément sur les besoins réels. C'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas forcément d'adéquation entre ce qui se passe sur le terrain et le besoin des apprenants et la planification qui est faite par le gouvernement ou au niveau des PTF. À titre d'exemple, récemment, je suis allée à l'intérieur du pays, surtout en milieu rural, où j'ai vu qu'en ayant un échange avec les différents apprenants, on a vu tout de suite que leurs besoins en termes d'expression n'étaient pas du tout ce qu'on avait planifié dans notre plan décennal. Et donc, à ce titre, il faut qu'on fasse un réajustement pour réellement répondre à ce besoin-là. Et après une discussion aussi avec le secteur privé, il se plaignait très souvent que nos programmes, nos filières de formation ne correspondaient pas forcément à ceux du marché de l'emploi, ce qui fait que nos jeunes sortent aujourd'hui avec un large nombre de jeunes ne pouvant pas trouver d'emploi ou même s'auto-employer parce que ça ne répond pas forcément au secteur. Donc des réformes en ce moment sont en cours pour pouvoir répondre à ces problématiques. Aussi, nous avons en Guinée 3 instruments majeurs pour le financement du système éducatif. Le premier instrument, c'est le budget national de développement, qui est en grande partie le budget alloué à l'éducation. Ensuite, nous avons un budget d'affectation spéciale qui s'appelle BAS, qui est un budget qui a été mis en place par les partenaires techniques et financiers et l'État. Et ensuite, nous avons des fonds FINEX qui sont disons, tout à fait financé complètement par les partenaires techniques et financiers, mais il se trouve que les procédures de décaissement suivent les procédures de ces partenaires-là. Et parfois, en termes de difficultés, c'est très énorme parce que leurs procédures sont très longues. Donc, à titre illustratif, je vais me focaliser aujourd'hui sur le BAS, qui est le budget d'association spéciale, aujourd'hui, qui permet de voir la coopération entre les bailleurs de fonds et la Guinée et comment est-ce que ce programme permet d'améliorer le niveau d'éducation en Guinée. Donc, le BAS est un outil novateur mis en place par le gouvernement guinéen et les partenaires techniques et financiers pour faire face aux problèmes de l'éducation nationale. Il repose sur plusieurs principes, notamment l'alignement sur les procédures et structures nationales, l'harmonisation de ces procédures au niveau des barres de fonds, l'appropriation par les secteurs financiers nationaux, la flexibilité dans l'allocation des ressources et enfin la mise à disposition de ces ressources dans un compte spécial qui ne peut être utilisé que pour ce fonds pour éviter qu'il y ait une mixité entre les fonds nationaux et celui de ce projet-là, de ce programme. Plusieurs défis restent toutefois à signaler dans l'exécution des fonds, bien que le secteur éducatif procède chaque année à l'identification des priorités qui sont présentées dans un plan opérationnel qui est revu en fonction des réalités. Et la mise en œuvre de ce fonds est marquée par notamment des reports importants de crédits. Donc chaque année, on a à peu près 50% de crédits qui sont reportés d'une année à une autre. L'allocation inégale entre les trois sous-secteurs. Donc nous avons au niveau du secteur éducatif, en fonction, le secteur préuniversitaire est moins doté, par exemple, que l'enseignement technique, qui est moins doté que l'enseignement supérieur. La non-pertinence de certaines activités qui sont planifiées et aussi la faiblesse dans la processus d'attribution des marchés. Donc les causes de ces différents défis sont, entre autres, la lourdeur administrative dans le circuit de l'exécution des dépenses, la faible capacité de certains acteurs à maîtriser les processus de passation de marché. Donc, on a réellement, en termes de renforcement de capacité, on a un réel défi à ce niveau. Et aussi, la lourdeur dans le traitement des dossiers, notamment dans tout ce qui est anneaux au niveau des PTF, qui prend énormément de temps. À titre d'exemple, quand je venais juste de prendre service il y a quelques mois, on a demandé à un des partenaires de bien vouloir donner son autorisation pour commencer à faire la procédure d'attribution, de non-objection au marché, et ça a pris en fait, ça fait 3 semaines qu'on est en attente encore d'un simple anneau de la part des PTF, donc ce qui déteint sur tout le processus. Nous avons néanmoins des recommandations que nous faisons au niveau, pour l'amélioration en fait, de ce cadre de coopération. Au niveau du gouvernement, aujourd'hui, on demande l'amélioration en fait, de la transparence par la production de rapports, le renforcement de l'engagement politique. Au niveau du secteur de l'éducatif, on a un accent sur une gestion beaucoup plus transparente des ressources qui sont allouées, le renforcement des capacités des cadres pour former notamment le personnel administratif et la gestion du circuit financier, le suivi et l'évaluation en mettant en place des mécanismes rigoureux et d'évaluation pour mesurer l'impact des fonds sur les objectifs éducatifs. Au niveau des partenaires techniques et financiers, nous avons notamment l'harmonisation des procédures de financement et de reporting. Nous avons également facilité l'échange de bonnes pratiques et d'expériences réussies dans d'autres pays, notamment dans des contextes ayant des contextes similaires, la flexibilité et la réactivité des partenaires en adoptant un suivi régulier des projets et les interventions en conséquence. Donc ça, c'est à peu près les différentes recommandations au niveau des différents secteurs. Donc là, vous avez les recommandations concernant les partenaires techniques et financiers, en termes de coordination, en termes de support qu'ils devraient apporter au niveau du gouvernement et également en termes de réactivité. Et donc, pour conclure, pour rester dans le temps, nous avons aujourd'hui compris qu'il est quand même important de continuer la collaboration entre les PTF et le gouvernement, mais également surtout impliquer les bénéficiaires de ces projets afin qu'il y ait une corrélation entre l'offre et la demande. Aussi, le renforcement de capacités et la transparence dans la gestion des fonds est fondamental et essentiel. Et enfin, l'objectif, in fine, c'est vraiment d'améliorer la qualité de l'éducation, mais surtout avoir une éducation pour tous les Guinéens en République de Guinée. Donc, sur ce, je vais essayer de rester dans les temps. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Very much appreciated. If I could ask our colleague from Malaysia to take the podium.
Thank you, David. That's my voices. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend my gratitude to the organizers for this opportunity to discuss approaches to allocating funding, effective planning, and identifying priorities in education. Reflecting on the global situation of education, there is no doubt that education is a catalyst for progress and the foundation of societal advancement. There has been progress in bringing children into the classrooms across the globe, especially in developing nations. From 2010 to 2020, the percentage of individuals without any formal education decreased from 16% to 13.7%. Nevertheless, the problem of learning poverty persists, particularly in low and middle income countries. Prior to the pandemic, 57% of children in these regions face the challenge of being unable to read and comprehend a simple age-appropriate text. Unfortunately, this figure has increased to 70% during the pandemic. Numerous factors pose challenges to assessing education. Marginalization, poverty, and financial constraint in developing nations are significant hurdles for individuals seeking formal education. Governments play vital roles in education. It is crucial to emphasize their responsibility in ensuring quality, equity, and access for all learners. This necessitates a balanced approach that combines regulatory oversight with flexibility and innovation, fostering the holistic development of individuals. Now allow me to turn your attention to the situation in Malaysia. Our society is evolving, and this demands a transformation in government's operations. The behaviors and lifestyles of our citizens are changing as their income and education levels rise. We are also witnessing the emergence of a smarter and richer society. Hence, we need for a nuanced approach in education and governance to address diverse perspectives and aspiration. We are moving away from the old paradigm where the government knows and does all. It is over. Instead, we adopt approaches that resonate with our post-modernization society. Our governance also reflects the new behaviors and expectations of our citizens. As an upper middle income country, our vision is to transition into a high income and advanced economy. Currently, we are just 11% away from achieving high income status, and in terms of economic complexity, we are ranked 22nd globally. Our challenge is to produce talent and knowledge that drive high-impact innovation and provide new ideas and solutions. According to the International Labour Organization's 2024 report, 20% of Malaysia's workforce is low-skilled, 49% are middle-skilled, and 31% are highly skilled. It is imperative that we increase the proportion of highly skilled individuals. This is a major task for our ministry as we strive to produce the talents our nation's need. Education is crucial for two primary reasons. It benefits the nations and the individuals. For the nation, a more educated populace propels us forward. For individuals, higher education translates to better living standards. Consequently, our investment in education yields public and private benefit. It is only natural that both public and private sectors share the responsibility of financing education. For 2024, the government had allocated 19% from the whole nation budget for education, which is the highest amount amongst the whole ministry, which is approximately $16 billion. Recognizing this substantial contribution, we must strategically align our resources and efforts to maximize their impact. Earlier this year, my team at the ministry and I developed a strategic vision and set out our priorities to guide our efforts in the coming years. We have identified 5 key focus areas, each requiring robust funding from both public and private sources. These priorities are designed to elevate our nation's global standing, foster innovation, and ensure sustainable development, much like how a well-tended garden thrives when it receives the right balance of sunlight and water. By nurturing this area, we aim to cultivate a brighter, more prosperous future for our education system and our country. The 5 focus areas are as follows. First, high-quality talent. We aim to develop high-quality talents that align with our economy's need. This means nurturing individuals who possess not only advanced skills, but also strong ethical values. Our goal is to produce industry-ready graduates who are future-proof and capable of driving our economy forward. Second, impactful research and innovation. Our research and innovations efforts must go beyond scholarly pursuits. We are committed to generating impactful solutions that address our economic challenges and create tangible benefit for society. This involves fostering research that has real-world applications and contribute to intellectual progress. Third, transfer of knowledge. We will focus on the transfer of knowledge to society at large. This involves strengthening our societal impact by making knowledge accessible and relevant to the community. By treating communities as living laboratories, we can assure that academic insights directly benefit the public. Fourth, internationalization and globalization. Strengthening global relations and becoming active participants on the world stage is crucial. We aim to make Malaysia a hub for global education, facilitating both inbound and outbound exchanges. This includes hosting international universities and sending our students and faculties abroad to gain global perspective. Fifth, quality enablers. Ensuring excellence in operation governance, finance, human resources, IT, and campus infrastructure is fundamental. These enablers are critical for supporting the other focus area and ensuring that our institutions operate at the highest standards. To effectively embed these priorities into the operation of our university, we have outlined a comprehensive planning process, pretty much like what Dr. Kabul mentioned just now. It's based on the outcomes, the results-oriented. First, stakeholder engagement and workshops. We conduct engagement and workshops with university leadership and stakeholders. This collaborative approach ensures that all parties are aligned and committed to our common goal. Second, defining common outcomes. We define the outcomes we aim to achieve within each of 5 focus areas. This collective effort helps us set clear and attainable targets. Third, strategic actions and operational targets. Faculty and administrators from universities gather within their own respective institutions to discuss and develop strategic actions and operational targets. These proposals align with the 5 focus areas while respecting each university-specific mission. Fourth, ministry-university agreements. Ministry and universities agree on the deliverable for each focus area. This mutual understanding paved the way for effective implementation. Fifth, progress tracking. We developed a dashboard to track progress and establish committee for each focus area. This ensures continuous monitoring and accountability. 6, committee structure. 3 levels of committee be established: working committees, steering committees, and central committees. These groups oversees the executions and performance of our initiatives. 7, executions and performance monitoring. The executions and performance of our strategies be closely monitored and reported. This ensures that we remain on track to achieve our goals and can make adjustments as needed. Mr. Chairman, as we embark on this journey towards effective funding allocations, strategic planning, and setting our priorities, it is important to remember that this is not a solitary endeavor. It requires us to learn from one another, share the best practices, and collaborate towards a common vision of education as a catalyst for positive change. By working together, we can harness our collective strengths to create a brighter future for generations to come. Let us seize this opportunity, especially in this esteemed hall and members that are participating now, with humility and determination, fully committed to making a lasting impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. And I'd now like to invite the Minister for Tunisia to take the podium.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, there is no better investment for individuals, communities, and nations than education. We all know this. We all agree that quality education is a basic human right. Education is a priority as proclaimed by every government. However, today, in 21st century, millions of girls and boys are still deprived of their right to quality education and inclusive education, and in many countries, there's a chronic underinvestment in education, which endangers everyone's right and ambitions for a prosperous and peaceful future. Since its independence, Tunisia has always put its compass on education. This was our priority and still is. Our first national budget allocated 1/3 to education, translating into fact our long-standing policy promoting the social function of education. In the late 50s of the 20th century, when asked about schools being built in remote areas and not easily accessible with roads, late President of Tunisia, Habib Bourguiba, affirmed that it's not the road that brings schools to remote communities. It's the school that will make roads for everyone. Our education system provided opportunities to all of us, Tunisians, to climb the social ladder without regard to regional, social, and economic origin. It provided equal opportunities to boys and girls. As a result, today, in the University of Tunisia, 66% of our students are female. 55% of our researchers are women. Today, despite unprecedented pressure on our public finances, we still rank first globally in terms of government funding by pupil. In secondary education, our percentage of GDP per capita. Between 2017 and 2021, spending on higher education increased by 37%. And the percentage of spending on each graduate increased by 50%, which reflects the Tunisian government's continued investment in higher education and scientific research. More and more investments are being directed to training quality programs, employability, and entrepreneurship, encouragement of scientific production, as well as university service directed to students. University services such as housing, catering, and grants represent more than 20% of the budget of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. This is, again, and in concrete terms, how we promote the social function of education and how we foster international solidarity between nations through knowledge exchanges. As the world is transforming deeply and the education systems are requested to respond to new, emerging, and future needs, the picture appears to be contrasting and the challenges tremendous. On the one hand, we do well globally in terms of availability and quality of human resources. We rank 8th in education and overall 35th in human capital and research, according to the Global Innovation Index. We are also ranked 3rd globally in the percentage of graduates in science and engineering. On the other hand, we have to drastically improve the impact of our education, science, and innovation in transforming knowledge to economic value and social welfare. We produce good knowledge, but we absorb little of it. We produce good doctors, engineers, and scientists, but this talent leave the country, like Dr. Amel. 1/3 of our engineers leave the country upon graduation, and the rates are more concerning in the area such as ICT. You can measure the challenge our country is facing, with 78% of the total immigrants who left in recent years being university graduates. Sadly, there are comparable situations in many developing countries with difference of scale, not of nature. In the developing world, not only reskilling is needed, but also retaining the skilled workforce is a critical importance. The contrast between human capital production and the human capital contribution is creating value is also clear in Tunisia when it comes to reskilling to adapt to the future economy. we put policies to build the top skills which are required for no one. We are giving more and more attention to the soft skills of our youth in schools, vocational training institutions, and universities. One of the main assets of the Tunisian education system is that it provides basic education on entrepreneurship to a large part of the students. However, job reskilling needs continuous adaptation in a fast-changing world. It requires investment along with the new institutional structures, information systems, and regulation. While we are keeping investment levels in education at very high levels, the breakdown of our expenditure on education shows a predominance of expenditure on salaries. The dilemma is the following. In a country where education is the top priority and where we spend a lot on education, how to dedicate more resources in times of economic difficulties to reforms and are not to quick wins. How to keep investment in basic education and invest more in lifelong learning and reskilling. Transformation is inevitable, and the path is clear. However difficult it is. Continuing to invest massively in education as it was always the case since our independence. Adapting to the changing realities of education and the job markets. Dedicating own resources, fostering public-private partnerships, and mobilizing international funds. Developing agile national policies and international collaborations to regain and retain brains, while continuing to push at the international level for more balanced approaches to circulation of skills, especially between North and South. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. Now, this session, as ever, doesn't afford us as much opportunity as others for questions because it is sandwiched, which is a good word in this respect, between coffee and lunch. And so it always, and I'm always, as you can see, possibly by looking at me, I'm slightly prejudiced in favour of lunch. But this is just to remind you, if people can't get all the questions they want in, then there are plenty of other sessions, and there are also the speakers will be available to discuss with, and you'll be discussing them between yourselves. Just to remind yourself that when the Minister from Tunisia is replying to questions, non-Francophones will require their headphones. Can I just say, from my own point of view, I'm very interested to hear the Minister from Tunisia take up a point that was actually made yesterday also by his colleague from Morocco about the problems of training up people at significant expense to find that they have migrated, essentially. And I mean, I don't know how far this is a kind of... and it's also very interesting to contrast this with some of the funding problems from Guinea. I don't know whether Malaysia has a similar kind of situation, probably in a slightly different position. But anyway, that was an interesting theme that has now developed over the last course of the last 2 days. Anyway, enough from me. Can I see if there's anybody? We'll take questions in batches of 3 or 4, and if anybody would like to ask, somebody's got to be the first. And there's already, yes, thank you very much for being the first over there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you very much for those enlightening presentations. Once again, I would remind you that I'm a mayor of one of the districts in Mauritania, the capital Nouakchott, and I was very much impressed by the fact that your presentation about investing and about funding the outcomes and the results. And you know, as local authorities, we are very much interested, very much, we care much about the outcomes and about the results when it comes to, you know, infrastructure, when it comes to helping the community with especially infrastructure, educational infrastructures. So my question to the minister, the Tunisian, the lady, is about what you're doing. You're regarding you know, collaboration with municipalities and with local authorities when it comes to outcomes and results. Because you know, we get the impression that a lot of the programs and a lot of the projects that get initiated, we don't see, especially when it comes to training trainers or whatsoever, you don't see outcomes. And you gave a good example. Or sometimes you see outcomes that are out of place. You gave the example of the you know, the toilets or whatsoever, the bathrooms that were built to students that they had priorities, that you know, schools had much more priorities, focusing on the doors of the classrooms and so on and so forth. So what are you doing in that regard? That's the question I'm asking. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. And there's somebody over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Khalid. I'm from the British Embassy, Tunis. I'm Tunisian. I will ask my question in English and then very quickly translate it to French for ministers. From all the discussions during these 2 days, fantastic 2 days, it's clear that we are moving from a standard definition of education as a technical aspect to a wider definition that includes skills, job market, and also risks associated to education. So, Minister just said that education can avoid extremism, can avoid violence, etc. So it's not that very simple definition, it's really wider. My question is, does this involve or require a wider collaboration also between the different ministries from the same government? Is education now a government effort rather than a ministry effort because of all these linkages? En français, donc l'éducation, c'est bon?
It's translated, it's fine. No, it's fine. Yeah, you don't have to do it.
Juste par respect. Merci.
Thank you very much for your question. And we have another question directly behind. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Nido Duk, British Council, Ghana. Question on the Education Outcomes Fund. I'm very used to, you know, I've heard a lot about the fund. I fall in love with the fund. You know, I think it's going to bring a lot of sanity and results in the education sector. But I know service providers can be scared because they can invest money in implementing a project, and at the end of it, if there are no outcomes, they lose their money. What's EWF doing to kind of allay their fears and make sure, you know, things like that doesn't happen, so we can keep everybody in the ecosystem running? Thank you.
So, oh, you have another? We'll take another question. That's fine. Yeah, we will. Yeah, we'll take a fourth.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joan Osaviawe. I'm the Commissioner of Education, Edo State. My question is directed to Emil. I'm very interested in the whole idea of outcomes-based funding, particularly in low-resource countries or states like ours. So I was just wondering, how do we marry both, setting the right kinds of priorities and then also funding based on outcome? Because part of the challenges we find from the work that we did in my state is that the issue is not lack of funds, it's the mismanagement of the funds and the lack of priority setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, so we have 4 questions there from Ghana, from Malawi, from Tunisia, and from Mauritania, covering different aspects of them. Quite a lot ending up on your plate, Emil. So feel free to take your time to answer what you want to answer, then I'll come to the ministers.
Yeah, great. So setting the outcomes you want to achieve is not easy, to be honest, because we don't think in outcomes. You know, often we think we want to build schools, we want to train teachers, etc. And So we spend quite a lot of time defining those outcomes, and as I said, it's a lot about saying no rather than yes. When we started in Ghana, for example, at that time with the minister at that time, name was Matthew, and he was like, oh, I want to do this in secondary and primary and out of school, like you have a million things to do and still you have kind of to focus. The even harder bit is the price per outcome. What is the price you want to pay for a child that can read and write? You know, we don't have those prices because on the other end, when I sometimes do a sad joke, when I look at that fund for employment where it subsidizes young people in jobs with the hope that 2 years later they will going to be taken. A country spent 400 million on it every year, and when we did an evaluation, 15% were employed. I was like, you can't say the price is you spending $1,000 per young people. You have to divide by the 15% who are employed, and then you can send each one of them to Harvard literally. So that's also another part of the work that we do, is really to define together the price per outcome. And then to build the capacity of the government to really work with partners who can help them achieve those. And the question, it links to the question from Ghana, where obviously when you pay for outcomes, if you pay after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, someone needs to pre-finance this work. And that's not part of the work we do, but we much make governments and partners with what's so-called social investors. So these are people who are willing to pre-finance the work and to get not only like financial return, but also social returns once the outcomes are achieved. And if the outcomes are not achieved, not the government and not the partners working on the ground lose their money, but actually the social investors would lose their money, which is normal for them. Investors take risk all the time. And people actually called this idea crazy, to be honest with you, at the beginning. They were like, you're going to never find investor. You know, working in Sierra Leone, low-income country, at that time, out of Ebola crisis, COVID, who's the hell is going to come and invest and bet on government and partners to deliver for children? We were 2.7 times oversubscribed. You have to understand there are a lot of women and young people inheriting wealth. Sorry to the man in the room, but they want to spend that money differently, so they care more about social outcomes, not just financial returns. There is a big push for big social, pension funds in the world to invest like a part, 0.1%, 1% of the trillions that we all are putting in pension funds for social returns. So there is a big market. The question is, how can government and municipalities access that type of funding? And for me, I'm really passionate about increasing the financial engineering ability of ministries of education. I think in the education ecosystem, we don't understand capital. We don't understand financial engineering as well as, let's say, the climate sector or the health sector, how you can take little money and kind of financial engineer to leverage that money, that grant or that taxpayer money, to basically create much bigger funding. And this is something that I know USAID, for example, is passionate about, the UK government also, and we're trying to build that kind of capacity slowly. But I feel we are really lacking in that, and we need to increase our financial engineering. So I hope I answered some of those.
You certainly have. Would the Minister from Guinea have some questions she would like to answer from this round?
Yeah, thank you very much. What, from my perspective, is not just about raising the funds or allocating the funds. The challenge that we face is how to execute those funds into actions. And then we spend more time back and forth between the partners and the administration part than actually being on the ground. And we end up not having any outcome realized on the ground. And for me, that is what is really sad. And then we have to review that part. Because when I look at most of the projects that we're trying to implement on the ground, if, for instance, within the year we have, like, let's say 10 activities planned, whatever is infrastructure, building, equipment, we spend 1/3 of the time into procedures. And then when you finish with the procedures, the financial circuit is also another challenge. So you spend 2 months. So almost after 6 months, you're still into those procedures. And then you have 6 months to, let's say, build a school, if like a decent school, or do the equipment, knowing that the fund will end at the end of the year. So, and then you have to reallocate those funds to the next year. So it's like a vicious circle, which is the credits are being reported from year to year to year until the program ends. So if, for example, let's say the fund was like 50 or 80 million fundraised, the countries end up using probably 20% of those 80 million. And then the rest is just wasted. And for me, that's just a shame. And that is not something particular to Guinea. It's something particular to most sub-Saharan countries and other developing countries. And even worse, what I've seen for working in the United Nations is most of those funds are more used into the financing the, let's say, the salaries and the other things of the staff from the partners than actually on the real use of those funds, which should be directly to the education sector.
Yeah, this sounds like a very familiar problem. Could I invite the Minister from Tunisia to answer some questions and to remind you, non-francophones, that you'll require your headphones?
Merci. Je voudrais dire tout d'abord que la question des fonds ou des investissements pour le secteur de l'éducation dépend énormément dans quelle zone on se trouve du monde. La question se pose différemment entre les pays en voie de développement et pour les pays développés. Pour moi, ce n'est pas la même réponse. Pour les pays en voie de développement, il faut que les gouvernements, et ça n'engage que moi bien évidemment, font de l'éducation une priorité absolue. Parce qu'il ne faut pas dire que ça va prendre beaucoup d'argent sur le budget, mais le retour, on ne peut pas créer de richesse si on n'a pas un capital humain formé et compétent. On peut avoir des richesses naturelles, et les exemples sont multiples, mais les populations sont pauvres. L'inverse est vrai, c'est-à-dire si on développe le capital humain avec le minimum, je dirais, de fonds, on peut bien sûr créer de la richesse. Donc ça, c'est, je dirais, le premier volet. Deuxième chose, maintenant, lever de fonds est nécessaire aussi parce que les budgets de ces États-là sont généralement limités. Il y a plusieurs priorités. Il y a l'éducation, la santé, l'infrastructure. Donc on a besoin de fonds, sans parler de la solidarité internationale. Je veux dire, s'il y a un secteur qui s'y prête, c'est vraiment le secteur de l'éducation. C'est là où on voit la grandeur de la solidarité internationale, comme la santé d'ailleurs. Mais j'aimerais insister là-dessus sur un point fondamental. Les modèles, ou bien les modèles qui ont réussi dans certains pays ne sont pas tous transposables. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut étudier le contexte. On a des success stories dans quelques pays. Ça ne veut pas dire qu'automatiquement ils vont réussir. Et donc il y a des pays qui s'endettent en contractant des crédits, mais les résultats sont malheureusement en deçà des attentes, pour ne pas dire catastrophiques. Un autre point aussi, quand on n'a pas une vision claire, une politique, quand on dit vision et politique, on ne doit pas changer chaque semaine, chaque année. Donc c'est quelque chose, je dirais, même pas à court terme. C'est au moins à moyen et long terme. Et donc, l'instabilité aussi des systèmes politiques en est une cause principale, même au sein même d'un gouvernement. Parfois, on change de ministre et chacun arrive avec entre guillemets, une vision. Je n'ose même pas dire une vision. Et à chaque fois, on redémarre de zéro. Et auquel cas, on n'avancera jamais. Donc, pour ne pas monopoliser la parole, je dirais, lever des fonds, c'est bien. On a besoin de fonds, on a besoin d'argent pour que l'éducation avance, mais à mon sens, ce n'est pas uniquement les fonds.
Thank you very much. And just to say, you can have stable government and still have short-termism, which is also quite interesting. The last word for the session goes to our honoured colleague from Malaysia.
Thank you, David, for allowing me to speak. I thought you were not going to call me. After listening from my friends, I think one very important point that I want to raise here is that it all depends on our priority, how the country prioritizes its policy. In our contact from Malaysia, we placed education as number one, not defense. Right. Number two, of course, you need a very clear policy and vision for the nation. That's to answer also some of the questions raised just now on the why with the political changes, when politics change, the minister change, you will have new policy. But that's not in the case of Malaysia, because we have set up for 5 years and 10 years policy. Whoever comes in, they have to subscribe to the policy, the long-term policy that we have already drafted for. So, of course, new Malaysians like myself, just about 6 months ago. You have to come to look to review from a certain point, not to simply change the very core of the policy. That's one. Number two, you're right. One of the members also raised on the point that education is not about going to school or going to universities anymore. With the fast-changing world, in technology and so on and so forth, we can see now the focus is a bit varies, especially in the field of technical studies. Therefore, in that, within that framework, Malaysia has changed our structure a bit to suit the current development. We have, and in my ministry, for example, we have 3 levels of education, which we need to equally treat well, education-wise and other things as well. Campus-based, polytechnic-based, and college community. They call it community college-based. So this is to ensure the continuum of the process, so that we can have the clear pathway for our students and our people. That's also answered some of the issues raised with regard to having our human capital development as well as the talent development. So this is one of the areas that I want to share also with you. And the other point is that it also reminds us that what kind of model that we want to adopt to our respective country, as you rightly mentioned as well, as some of the members mentioned, that of course there is no one-size-fits-all formula or models. You have your own experience, you have your own problems, but please remind ourselves as well not to fall into what the economists always say, this isomorphic mimicry, where you feel that you want to have the best practices from certain countries, or you want to get the best consultant to advise you for your country. You get from the consultant from the Ivy League. Actually, instead of you find finally you can't suit into the system of your country. You may have more universities. Maybe one of the recommendations will tell you that you have to have more universities, but the country remain poor, for example. Then they propose also to you to have more policemen, but you have this what they call the crimes rise up. So I think that what we need to do is to make sure that the quality and the functions of the institution that you want to create and to provide solutions for your respective country. In our context, we have come up with our outcome-based analysis. We form our dashboard as well as laboratory. So we do this kind of, like a science lab to assess for every quarter of our development. So I would like to extend invitation to all members, or for if you feel that you want to come to Malaysia to learn through our experience managing our education and other sectors as well, you are most welcome to visit Malaysia.
Yeah, flights to Kuala Lumpur depart several times a day from all good airports. Can I thank our panel very much indeed for their contribution, you for your questions, and Gavin for giving us permission to go to lunch.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, everyone, for your questions again, for David's management of the session, and also for all your contributions. I would like, if you could put up the slide for the sessions that come after lunch. I just want to say a couple of words about that, because it's not coming into one room. And if that slide appears, no, if you wait 1 second. No. It's on its way, I believe. It's kind of, no, never mind. After lunch, what we have is the ministerial exchanges. The ministerial exchanges come in 2 sets of 3. So the first 3 ministerial exchanges happen at the same time. So that's one on balancing AI technology and traditional education. A second one on balancing early years and higher education, and a third one on balancing vocational and academic learning. You may recall that sometime earlier on today, or was it yesterday, I mentioned I wanted to introduce the Institute of Balance, and this is part of my process of doing that. So they're all balancing different parts, and we have to make decisions about which we think are most important, and that's about paying attention, as Malaysian Minister has so said so well. It's about actually suiting it to your own culture, to your own context, and to what is important in your country. The second 3 sets are optimizing green education and its impact, balancing science and arts, and learning through communities and networks. So the point about this, you are free to choose whichever of those sessions you wish to go to. They're in different rooms. One is in this room, one is on on level 4, this is level 3, one is on level 4, and one is on level 6 in each case. So look at your programs. They will indicate for you where these sessions are, and go to them. But before you do that, do as David said and have lunch and enjoy that. So thank you.